Okay, how's it going, guys? Here are the notes that we would have finished today with me in person, but I couldn't be here today. So I finished the notes online. So this is where we finished off yesterday, doing the two examples that were the easier ones. Remember, on the 45, 45, 90, we have 8, 8, and then the hypotenuse will be 8 radical 2. And then on this one, we had the hypotenuse was 5 radical 2. So we had to go backwards, and we knew that the two legs were 5. But then I gave you a harder version of the same problem where I told you the hypotenuse was 10. It didn't have a radical 2. And it ends up that what you get when you go backwards from there would be 10 divided by radical 2. Or you could write it as 5 radical 2. Either one works. I'm okay with you guys just leaving the answer in that form. If you get your calculator out and you do 10 divided by radical 2, you could type it like that, and that is the decimal. 7.07 would be that decimal right there. So you can do it that way too. So you can give me a decimal answer if you want. You can give it to me in radical form. I just want you to know how we got it. So next triangle that I didn't get to for your homework was a 30, 60, 90. So this next triangle is your 30, 60, 90 right triangle. In this one, it's basically if you take an equilateral triangle and you decide that you're going to cut it in half, that is where your 30, 60, 90 sort of comes up. Because remember, in an equilateral triangle, these angles are all 60. Ooh, that looks weird. And when you draw in that perpendicular line right there, that 60 angle got cut into two 30s. So that yield sign that you see when you're out driving on the road is, if you cut it in half, it's a 30, 60, 90. You have a long leg, you have a short leg, and you have the hypotenuse. So I'm going to label all these for you because all of them are different. So this is the short leg. This is what I call the long leg. And this one over here, we always know, is the hypotenuse across from the 90-degree angle. So which angles are which? Well, this is the bigger angle. So this is 60 degrees and this one is 30 degrees. Remember when we learned triangles and order of the different things, the different sides, the smallest angle should be across from the smallest side. That's the medium angle. So that's across from the medium side, and the largest angle, which is the 90, is across from the longest side. That's still true. Okay, so that's another way to remember which one's the short and which one's the long. I always remember the 30-degree angle is across from the short leg, and the 60-degree angle is across from the long leg. So those are your sides. What the heck is the pattern for a 30, 60, 90? So here is the pattern. On a 30, 60, 90, I'm going to draw it the same way for you. Just make it a little bigger. Okay, so we have our 30, 60, 90. We have our 90 here. I'll put my 30-degree angle there. I'll put my 60-degree angle there. Okay, they can be rotated, whatever, but you're just looking for it. So the pattern is, this is a crazy pattern. This is not a pattern that most people would have figured out. The pattern is the short leg, we're always going to start at the short leg. That is sort of where we start. So I'm going to call the short leg A, just like I did on the 45, 45, 90s. I called the two legs A. The short leg is going to be a length of A. It's going to be a number. I don't know what the number is going to be. Every problem is going to be different, but it's going to be A. The hypotenuse, not the long leg, the hypotenuse is always twice that. So whatever your short leg is, the hypotenuse is always multiplied by 2. So you take that short number and you multiply it by 2. That is the hypotenuse. Crazy. True. It is true. It's crazy. It is true. The long leg, this one's a little hard to remember. This one is always going to be the short leg times by the square root of 3, not square root of 2 like on a 45, 45, 90, square root of 3 on a 30, 60, 90. So to get to that one from the short leg, you multiply by the square root of 3 to get to that one. So there is your pattern. Short leg is some number. The long leg is you times it by radical 3. And to get to the hypotenuse, you times it by 2. If you need to go backwards for any reason, because let's say pretend they don't tell you one of these, the short leg. If you need to go backwards, you do the opposite. So if I need to go backwards from the hypotenuse and I need to go back to the short leg, instead of multiplying by 2, I will divide by 2. Can't even fit it because that thing's in the way. Move that out of the way. Okay. Oh, it popped back. Okay, so you divide by 2 to go backwards. If you happen to have the long leg, which is the worst problem of all of them, and you need to go backwards to get the short leg, the opposite of multiplying by radical 3 would be dividing by radical 3. That's how you go backwards. Okay, it's weird. I know, it's totally weird, but that is how it's done. Okay, so we're just following this pattern and we're trying to figure out the missing one. So like a good example is like this yield sign. I told you the one side was 36 inches from here to here. So that means that this is an equilateral triangle. All of these are 36 inches. 36 inches. Every side of that sign is 36 inches. Now, when you drew in the line that cut it into half, into 30, 60, 90, this became the short leg right here. You guys, most of you, I think, will realize that obviously this side right here is half of the 36. So this is 18 inches. Okay, from here to here, 18 inches, half of that one. That was the short leg. We knew the hypotenuse was 36 inches. So if we divide that by 2, we figured out what that was. It was when you cut that side in half, 18 inches right there. And then the long leg, the height of this triangle, will end up being, I can't really fit it in there without it messing you guys up, it will end up being the short leg, which is 18 times radical 3. So that will be the height of the triangle. This little part to the middle is 18 inches, and the hypotenuse we knew was 36. So that is one example of working through this pattern without using Pythagorean theorem. So this is so you don't have to use Pythagorean theorem. So remember, we don't want to use Pythagorean theorem on these problems. We're trying to do it by memorizing and using the pattern, not Pythagorean theorem. Okay, I think you guys are ready for examples. Let's do it. Here we go. So, first example. You got your 30, 60, 90. If you need to pause the video because you want to copy it down in your notes, pause the video. No big deal. Copy it down. When you're ready to start, go ahead and unpause. So you got a 30 up here, you got a 60 down here. I told you this side is 1, and this is y, and this is x, and I want you to get both. So first thing we decide is what side do we have? We have the short one. That is the short leg. That's actually the best one to have. If they're going to give you any one, that is the one you want. So once you know the short leg, to get to the hypotenuse, say it out loud with me, you multiply by 2. So the hypotenuse is 2. Boom. Hypotenuse of that triangle is 2. To get to the long leg, remember what do we do? Multiply, I forgot an L, by radical 3. So this is going to be 1 radical 3. That is the answer for the long leg. You're done. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Mr. Shevlin, you're lying. They're not all this easy. They aren't. That is true. They're not all this easy. I gave you the short leg on that one. That's not terrible. Okay, look at this one. This one, I gave you the hypotenuse. A little bit harder. Sort of like the sign we did just a minute ago. So, pause it if you need to copy it. Do it all down. Okay, you're unpaused now. Let's do it. So, I have just told you you need to realize, wait a sec, that's the hypotenuse. It's across from the 90-degree angle. So, we can't go from hypotenuse to the longer leg. We don't ever do that. Never, 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 never. But we can go from the hypotenuse and go back to the short leg if you remember that you have to divide by 2. So this is 5. Done. The y is 5. Okay. Once you have there, now it's just like this problem. You're just like, oh, that's easy stuff. Once you know the short leg, it's easy to get to there. You're going to multiply by the square root of 3. So that's going to be 5 square root of 3. Done. Done. Okay. Short leg is the key. This is the key, right? You love to know that one. That one is the key on a 30, 60, 90. The short leg. So we never jump from hypotenuse to long leg. Ever, 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 ever. Okay, last example for you. I had to give you the hardest one as the last example. I tell you that the side of the long leg is 9. Ooh! So when you see the long leg, and you see that it's 9, you cry for a little bit, maybe go get something to eat, come back, get over your fear, and we try. That's all you can do, you guys. Just try and get through something. So we know the long leg. So I'm going back. I'm going to look back at my thing. We know the long leg. So this is the one we're at right here. So you're always sort of looking back at your notes, you guys. So to go from there, we never go from there to the hypotenuse. That's too hard to figure out. But I can go from there to the short leg if I divide by the square root of 3. Okay, so we can go from the long leg to the short leg if I divide by the square root of 3. It's going to be ugly. Don't worry. 9 divided by the square root of 3. You could leave it like that. Totally fine. You could get a decimal. 9 divided by the square root of 3. Totally fine. You could even simplify it, but I haven't really showed you much how to simplify it. It simplifies to 3 radical 3 is what it simplifies to. So watch, I'll even prove it to you. 3 radical 3. Look at that. That is the same answer. So that's what it simplifies to. You don't really have to know how to do that. When you're in trig and when you guys are in advanced algebra, you will have to know how to do that. In geometry, we don't get crazy. We don't make you have to know how to rationalize that. So 9 divided by radical 3. Now, it's definitely easier if you're in this version than in this version. But remember, to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, remember, all we do is multiply by 2. So take that number, multiply it by 2, which means you don't have to worry about the bottom. Just multiply the top. So you end up getting 9 times 2. So this one is 18 divided by radical 3. That's one version of the answer. If you had already simplified it to 3 radical 3, and you times that by 2, you end up getting 6 radical 3, which is another version of the same answer. Okay? Or if you want to be in decimal land and you're in decimal land, you can times that by 2 and it's 10.39. Great. You can put 10.39 there. Okay? So you can use decimals. You can leave it in square roots. You can try to simplify it if you want to attempt that. To simplify it, let me show you for those of you who want the commercial. Those of you who don't want to know, stop the video now. Stop! Okay, if you're still watching, I figure you're serious about this. So 9 divided by radical 3. In order to rationalize that, you multiply by radical 3 over radical 3. That's our little trick called rationalizing. We're moving the radical from the bottom to the top. When we do that, we get 9 times the square root of 3 on the top. And on the bottom, when you do square root of 3 times square root of 3, it's actually just 3 because the square roots cancel out. And then once you get to this point, you can actually divide the numbers that are outside. So that's where you end up getting 3 square root of 3 because that divides to give you 3 and that one doesn't do anything, so it just stays there on top. And the bottom number is 1, so we don't write it anymore. So that's how we did that. That's how we got to this point. Makes it a little easier to get to the next place. When you multiply by 2 here, don't multiply both numbers. Just multiply the front number that's on the outside, not the square root number. Okay, so that is it. That is the video. Hopefully you guys can do your homework. Go to that homework that was on Thursday's assignment sheet, and now you're going to go and you're going to do that for today in class. Your answers can be in radical form. Your answers can be in decimal form. I don't care. I'm not too strict on that. But try and attempt everything. If you need to draw the pictures, draw the pictures. It can be helpful to draw the pictures. Okay? And just remember, if you forget, look in your notes. Everything is right there for that one. And then if you go back to yesterday's notes, you guys all have the pattern for the 45, 45, 90, which is right here. It's a little easier on that pattern. Those two should match. That one always is times radical 2. If you need to go backwards, you have to divide by radical 2. So I'll put a little arrow there to remind you guys that if you're going this way, you multiply by radical 2. And if you got to go backwards, all you do is divide by radical 2. And that's sort of how you go backwards. And that is the pattern. Okay, guys, that is it. Go ahead, start your work. You should have about 40 minutes. Go for it. You should be done. And then you have no homework for spring break. Have a good spring break. We'll see you on Monday when you guys come back.